rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Whatever it is you celebrate this time of year, I wish you the best. Got a great show for you this week. Rebel Force Radio, our final weekly podcast of the year 2024. And, of course, that's going to be a big topic on the show this week. We're going to be looking back on the year that was 2024 and probably talking a little bit about the things we're looking forward to in the new year. But we've got business to get to first. Of course, Skeleton Crew just debuted, premiered the fourth episode, so we're about halfway through that. If you're not joining us on our Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew after shows, you really must. You really must. It kind of goes back to appointment watching. I know it's not convenient for everybody, but if you are available when we're doing that. And how do you know when we're doing that? Well, you follow us on YouTube. You follow us on our social media channels, and you'll get notifications. Believe me, we let you know when we're going live, so you can't miss it. Just make sure you're following us. But we're going to catch up on some Skeleton Crew news, as well as some listener feedback. And as I say, we'll be looking back on the year that was 2024 on this very special holiday edition of Rebel Force Radio. And if you are new to the program, so many people find us whenever there's a new Disney Plus series on and we're doing the after shows. So if you are new to the program and you need an introduction, well, hello, my name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. I'm so excited for the show. This is the final RFR episode, the final weekly RFR of 2024. Single tier. But hey, there's nothing to worry about. We're still going to be coming at you with some Skeleton Crew after shows, and that'll take us right into 2025. And then the weekly RFR will be back, so nothing to fear. But it will be a Star Wars holiday with fresh Star Wars dropping for the next few weeks throughout the Christmas week and the New Year's week. And we'll be talking Skeleton Crew, watching Star Wars, getting together with you guys, and having a good time. So I'm looking forward to that. But this is the final weekly RFR, and this is such a staple of my week. I really love getting together with you, Jason, talking about the latest stuff going on in Star Wars, whatever's going on in our heads, hearing from our listeners, hearing what they're thinking. And this is, to me, my favorite part of the week. So despite the nice little break we'll be getting from the weekly show, it doesn't mean that we'll be unplugging from Star Wars, though, because Skeleton Crew is going to be keeping us busy, and we hope you guys will be with us for those after shows. The Skeleton Crew next week on Christmas week will be dropping Thursday, December 26th. I shouldn't say dropping. We're going to be streaming live, and the show will be dropping as a podcast shortly after in the evening. But we'll be live on our YouTube channel on Thursday, December 26th, talking about the 5th episode of Skeleton Crew, and it should be a great time. But for this week, we have some cool little nuggets. I've been scoping out some recent interviews that have been popping up. One I found with a couple of guys from ILM who worked on the show, and they talk about bringing Neil to life and about some Easter eggs we might be seeing in upcoming episodes.
I've been wondering about Neil. Like, what's the experience for the people on set interacting with Neil? Things like that. I don't, they do it so well that as I'm watching the show, I feel like I'm just watching an actor with a trunk. Really, it's just, I don't even think about it, because I think the performance and the effect is so well sewn together that I just don't. I have to sometimes stop and remind myself, oh, that's a kid. I don't know. Is he wearing like a blue stocking on his face? What's he got going on there?
Well, we got these ILM wizards who are going to be throwing some info at us later in the show, courtesy of some highlights I pulled, along with the owl lady Kh'ymm, the actress behind the voice of Kh'ymm, who appeared in episode 3 of Skeleton Crew. We're going to hear from her via some red carpet highlights that we have because, of course, RFR microphones were there. And there's been a recent interview this week with a top Disney suit, a big shot executive who kind of explains why the ACOLYTE was canceled. So we'll hear what he had to say, along with the 2024... Yeah. Along with the 2024 RFR Star Wars Year in Review. You guys were with us this whole year. It's been a great year for RFR. I don't know if you can actually say that for Star Wars, but Star Wars certainly has kept us busy. And that's really, quite honestly, that's really all I want. I want them to continue to give us things to talk about. And so we'll go back. We'll look back at the year and talk about things that happened in the realm of Star Wars, along with things that happened within the realm of RFR itself. So, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays to everyone. We love you guys so much, and we're so happy that you're here with us for this final show of the year.
It's going to be great. Great.
I do want to talk about one thing that I kind of mentioned last week. And every once in a while when we're having these stream of conscious Star Wars conversations that we have, where we start delving into our memories and recalling certain things that stuck out to us throughout the history of Star Wars, the almost 50 years of Star Wars, there was one thing I brought up last week just randomly that just popped into my head out of nowhere when we were listening to the Rick McCallum update. There was a French TV outlet who talked to Rick McCallum over the summer, and we played some highlights of that conversation just to get to know what Rick was thinking when he retired from Lucasfilm back when George sold the company. So as we're talking about that interview, I suddenly remembered this story about Jake Lloyd playing practical jokes on the set of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Yippee! And, hey, Jake, there he is. High fives. High fives.
Well, that's what he would do whenever he would have one of those practical jokes go over. He would just, yippee! Yeah, and then he would scamper off.
Now, I know we saw him say that in the film, but when I hear just the audio itself, I always picture young Anakin kind of getting a running start, jumping up in the air with a high five, saying, yippee! Boom! Bam! High fives with Anakin. That makes the yippee a little bit more digestible, in my opinion.
It does, yeah. You gotta give him some heroic business in there. Even jumping up with a high five is a little bit better than
woo, bam.
Getting told he has the rest of the day off. I think that was it, right? That was Watto was giving him the rest of the day off. I think he only had like a half hour left on the clock. So
yeah, right. Chut, Anakin. You can punch out early. Yippee! Boom! High five. So, and with Watto, you have to give him a high five because the guy floats. He has wings, but Watto largely floats. The wings don't have to do so much work.
You know, he's like he's kind of got that hummingbird thing going on, where you know the wings are flapping like crazy, but he's just sort of like a helicopter or a hummingbird. He just sort of stays still.
The story I seem to recall from the making of Episode 1 was when the animators, like Rob Coleman and his crew, started questioning George Lucas about Watto flying. I think this came after a screening of some early special effects going on for Watto, where his wings were flapping really, really fast.
Yeah.
And George thought that was a little bit too much. He's like, tone it down a little bit with the violent flapping of the wings. And the ILM animation crew was like, well, George, you were telling us kind of think hummingbird. And if you ever see a hummingbird in flight, you can barely see their wings. They're moving so fast. George said, no, tone it down. Just think of like Watto having a belly full of helium gas. That just sort of helps him levitate a little bit. And the wings more or less control his movements as opposed to controlling his flight.
Wow.
I think that's genius.
It is absolute
genius.
Genius. It's because I can imagine the frustration to some degree of the ILM guys. Like, George, we gave you what you asked for. And instead of George just, I changed my mind, he spins it around and goes, no, think of it this way. Belly full of helium. And they go, that's why you're George Lucas and I'm not.
But take a closer look at Watto next time you watch The Phantom Menace, and you'll notice that some of his wing movements are not as rapid. They're a little more deliberate than you would imagine. He does sort of have a hovering effect, as like a balloon that's losing some of its helium.
Well, a Toydarian of a certain age, it's going to happen. They're going to lose some of that.
But back to this Jake Lloyd story. I had this recall of Jake playing a practical joke on Rick McCallum on the set of The Phantom Menace. And I had to research it because I was like, where did I get that story from? It's not like I was there. I can't, but it was just something, just this little trivial tidbit I pulled out of the Opie's butt. And it was something I saw on, I guess it was StarWars.com back in the day. They did an Ask Lucasfilm feature where fans would ask questions as episode 1 was in production. They called it Ask Lucasfilm. So somebody asked Lucasfilm because Jake had mentioned he had been playing practical jokes on the set and just left it at that. And they said, what practical jokes or pranks did you get to play on the set? And Jake says, this is the quote. I dug into the internet and found it. Jake says, I froze Rick McCallum's cigarette case. I don't like it when people smoke because it's not good for them, so I figured that would stop him. They have these large machines on the set for cooling, and I used one to freeze it.
And then he ran off. So
Jake was being a kid on the set. He was playing some practical jokes. Rick McCallum had a cigarette case. Fancy schmancy.
Yeah.
The last person I saw with a cigarette case. The last person I ever saw who had a cigarette case was my grandmother, But
don't
who
forget,
still walks around with
the
cigarette
case saved the life of Johnny Dangerously.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But he carried gum in his.
It was in his chest pocket. Yeah, he did carry gum. Which is odd because when Johnny Dangerously was a kid, he made an ashtray for his mom for Christmas and presented it to her. And she said, well, this seals the deal. I've been thinking about smoking. Now I'm going to do it. She's like this elderly lady.
Great movie for you younger listeners. If you haven't seen Johnny Dangerously, that's one you got to check out. Michael Keaton, Joe Piscopo.
One. Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And he was fabulous in it. Just fabulous. And
Mary Lou Henner, too. Yowza.
Wow. So, and she still looks great. God bless Mary Lou
Yeah, she
Henner.
does. Wow.
So that's the Jake Lloyd story. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, wow, I really pulled that story out of the inner depths of my fandom. And I just wanted to verify that it was actually true.
And it's real. It's legit. My experience has been that smokers are generally humorless when it comes to anyone messing with their cigarettes. I have a lot of smokers in my family, and I remember one time I got some of those loads the little things that you stick in the end of the cigarette and you light it up and it explodes, right? Yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, not in my family. Not a lot of humor when it comes to the smokes.
Well, no. The smoker does not enjoy the prank. No, it doesn't work that way.
Because no matter how much money you make, the cost of cigarettes is insane. So you can be a big Hollywood, a big shot like Rick McCallum, and you're messing with those smokes, especially when you're in Tunisia and you can't get your Marlboros or wherever at the local store.
Oh man, I know it as a former smoker. I know it. So, but that's the story about Jake and Rick McCallum's pack of cigarettes. He froze them. I wonder what they had the cooling device for. I mean, obviously they're out in the desert. It's probably just stick your face in this machine and cool off for a few minutes. But that's interesting. He was able to direct the cooling unit to freeze, like he's like Mr. Freeze himself from the Batman, and he's out there cracking wise on the set.
The good news is those suckers would thaw out in Tunisia within seconds. You pull them out of there, lay them out.
Exactly.
They're gonna bake just fine, just fine.
So I guess Rick wasn't too upset at the end of the day.
All right, great story. My gosh, it's amazing how far back that goes now with episode 1 being 2019, 25 years old this year. That was unbelievable. I will say one of my goals over my holiday break is I intend to do a rewatch of the entire saga. So, I'm going to do a saga rewatch.
The whole saga.
The whole saga.
That all unfolds.
Yeah,
that's
I haven't done a concentrated saga rewatch in a long time, and I certainly haven't done it since the sequels came out. So,
ooh, I just got this text from every RFR VIP out there. They're currently placing bets on whether Jason is blowing smoke or not about watching the entire. So they're questioning whether you actually are going to do it, Jason.
How are you going to know? How are you going to know? You're just going to have to take my word for it.
Well, you're a pretty honest guy. I mean, if asked, I'm sure in January, when I ask you, you'll come clean. And you'll provide us with all of these insightful observations you made.
So insightful.
By binging all 9 episodes.
Yep.
And you're going to do it like all at once. You're not going to sleep or anything like that. Right?
Oh, no. I mean, no, straight through.
Full commitment.
Straight through.
Listen,
no sleeps until Christmas.
You're not, I know for a fact that you're not going to binge all 9 episodes of Star Wars and forgo sleeping. I know that. So I'm going to give you a break on that part of it.
I'm allowed to sleep.
But I just want you to be honest when we ask you in January.
Did
you do it?
Did I do it? Yeah.
Did you do it?
Yeah.
Did it consume your time? How long did it take you to do it? Did you do it in piecemeal or did you?
But my plan is to do one
binge?
a night.
I want to know how hard you binge. Okay, you have some time off here before the end of the year, and you plan
got time
one
off.
per night.
One per
night's fair. One per night is pretty damn good. Yeah. If you get into it, maybe you might even do 1.5, maybe even 2 per night.
Oh, let's not get crazy here. But I intend to do. I mean, all 9 of the saga films. Now, will I do Solo? Will I do Rogue One? Maybe.
Not necessary.
But I don't feel that it's necessary.
No, it's not necessary.
No.
The saga is the 9 films, the 3 trilogies.
Yes.
The other stuff is great, but you don't need to include that in your binge. We're setting pretty easy parameters on this.
Been sitting on these 4Ks for so long, and when I see Star Wars now, it's because it's on TV. It's streaming. Or I want to watch this particular scene that I'm thinking about, and I'll go on the Disney Plus app and I'll do it. But no, I want the experience of pulling the case off the shelf, popping the disc out, going to the player, dropping it in, because it's intentional. That's what I love about physical media, is it's intentional. It's not wallpaper. So I'm going to get intentional with my Star Wars here at the end of 2024.
Okay. Good. Well, we want a full report in January.
You got it.
We want to know if you pulled it off, for starters. And I'm pulling for you, man. I have faith that you're going to do it. And I may send you occasionally motivational texts.
Yes,
you
please.
might just receive a motivational text. Hey, you're falling behind. The Last Jedi. You better chew that sucker up now. It's got to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that.
We'll
see how that all plays out. Okay.
All right. Enough about me and you. Let's shine the spotlight on some of our listeners here with some listener mail.
Yeah.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message? Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Boy, it'd have been great if I'd have had that queued up. Son of a gun.
Maybe the same name. Man and the same. Man and the same name. Man and the same.
I'll just keep roboting until you find it.
Would you please? That'd be great. All right. Here we go.
Man and the same name. Man, all right.
Hey guys, Chut. This is Austin from Raleigh. Something just dawned on me while I was listening to the podcast this week, talking about kind of theories of Skeleton Crew, and there was a conversation with one of the callers about how this interacts with the Mandoverse, and I think it was Jason said that he doesn't think it will. It's a standalone. The fact that Zane is kind of the connection, and something went through my mind, and it makes me wonder. Since this whole show is kind of portrayed that Wynn is looking for something else, like he doesn't belong, he wants to be a Jedi, he's looking to go on that adventure, and this is in the Mandoverse timeline, is there a chance that this is going to interact quite a bit, and it's actually going to end with Wynn being one of the children that Luke Skywalker takes in? Because as of right now, the kind of Mandalorian showed he was willing to train Grogu, and obviously that worked out where Grogu ended up with Mando and all that. But in The Last Jedi, he does say, and I think I just looked this up, I think he says he trained 13 students total at that temple, one of which was Ben Solo. Obviously, this is years before that, and the question of how old was Luke when that occurred and how old was Ben Solo, and on the timeline, I'm not too in touch with all of the timeline and how that would fit, but something to think about. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Have a great week. Looking forward to listening to the next one. I think you guys just did a live one this morning. Thanks. Have a good one.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Look, I want to make something clear here. When I said that it's not going to tie into the greater mythology, I was not saying that because that's what I want. It's because I want to set reasonable expectations for myself and Rebel Force Radio listeners. We have been, I believe, let down to some degree about how much and how intricately these shows kind of all tie into the greater saga. We've made lots of speculations about, this character is going to be this person and this character is going to be revealed to be that person. It's just been burned too many times. So what I'm going to say is I think that this is a fun diversion. I think that we're going to learn some things about the Star Wars universe. We're already learning some things about the Star Wars universe. But as far as this tying into Luke Skywalker or Palpatine or even the Mandalorian, I don't see it happening.
I agree. And I think the biggest strength of the show is to create a scenario where the repercussions of this story is felt in future storytelling, whether it be the Mandalorian and Grogu film or season 2 of Ahsoka. Because really, that's all we have to hang on to you might include the Rey film into that mix. But really what we see right in front of us is season 2 of Ahsoka and the Mandalorian and Grogu film. So it would be very interesting if the end result of the kids' adventure has some serious repercussions on galactic events that follow it. It could create a new MacGuffin, if you will, for future storytelling when you talk about a treasure on a planet. Maybe the kids find one treasure at the end of this series, but maybe there's more. Maybe the planet's riddled with treasure. That would create an interesting MacGuffin for future Star Wars story, which takes you away from the fight between the light side and the dark side, or galactic dominance. It makes it more steeped in the underworld, which is a direction in which George Lucas wanted to take the story with the Star Wars Underworld TV show, which was going to focus on pirates and bounty hunters and scoundrels in the galaxy, and how the government, which would have been, I guess, the New Republic or the Empire, whatever. The Underworld show, was that supposed to all take place? That was supposed to take place between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, if I remember correctly.
Right, yes.
So, yeah, the Empire would have been a large presence in those stories.
And George would say that. George would say, well, you're not going to see the Emperor, or you're not going to see Darth Vader, but you'll hear about them. Their presence will be, to some degree, known, felt. So, yeah, he was definitely looking at that as a way to bridge the gap and show what ended up being shown in Rebels to some degree, the impact of the Empire to sort of the common person.
So what I'm hoping is that maybe this series will have a dramatic impact on stories told in the Mandoverse moving forward. The kids are involved in something that has repercussions on the galaxy to an extreme effect. And when you're talking about treasure, I mean, who doesn't want to hunt down treasure? That could send the whole galaxy into a free-for-all looking for riches.
Here's what I think. Two things here. One, I think we might be able to get some sort of reference in the future to At-Aten. At-Aten is going to have to be reintroduced to the galaxy far, far away. They're going to have to be, these people have essentially been in a deep freeze as they've been isolated. So I think we're going to see at least the seeds of the liberation, quote unquote, of At-Aten as they join the galaxy at large. So you could possibly hear in a scene with a New Republic officer saying, "Oh, they're overseeing the reintroduction of At-Aten right now," and that'll be like a little Easter egg that you could hear in something future. That's probably the best we're gonna get. Although, because this show, Lucasfilm doesn't know until obviously it airs what the reaction of the people are going to be. I think that if fans really, really love these kids, really support these characters, Lucasfilm could potentially bow to fan fervor and demand, so to speak. But I don't think any of that's been decided yet, because they're still waiting to see what the reaction to this series and these characters is going to be.
No. I think we got more about that coming up later in the show when we hear about what this mystery Disney suit had to say about the ACOLYTE cancellation and stuff. But I'm just thinking maybe they are planting the seed for some future storytelling to build upon it outside of the Skeleton Crew story. It could have a large impact. I've heard John Watts and Christopher Ford allude to things of that nature. And now, as the story is becoming more and more revealed to us, about the fact that At-Aten to the galaxy at large seemed like a myth, a fairy tale, a place where there's treasure, the jewels of the Republic, all of that stuff. Well, now I think the galaxy is beginning to get tipped off steadily that it's not a myth, it's the real deal. Just like the galaxy thought Luke Skywalker was a myth. He was the real deal. We're beginning to see how educated the galaxy is about the galactic events that happen on a more like regular Joe sort of scale, more than we ever would have imagined. And we couldn't have imagined that because in the original trilogy era, of course, all the characters really knew what was up. Even Luke seemed, out in Tatooine, seemed pretty much informed about what's happening in the galaxy at large. But there are certain things in certain corners of the galaxy that seem to be the talk of fable and myth. And once the whole galaxy discovers that At-Aten may be the place where treasure can be found, and At-Aten will become a very popular place, no doubt about it. I really enjoyed how in this last episode of Skeleton Crew, they had the names of the other planets revealed. And I think we got 6 of them if you include At-Aten. There was at A2, at Orisa, at Arvin, at Akota, at Akron. Shout out to Ohio.
At Akron.
And of course, At-Aten, which is the one we've known from the beginning. But what are the other planets? Maybe the Skeleton Crew will visit Hawkeye Pierce at Alda, Alan Alda. Or maybe they'll go to grab a roast beef sandwich at Arby's. Or they'll go ice fishing at Alaska.
Uh-oh.
Or
he's on a roll.
They'll grab...
He's on a roll. There's no stopping him now.
Maybe they can grab some guacamole at Avocado.
Someone was up late last night editing the after show.
Or maybe they're listening to other Star Wars podcasts at Agony. Yeah, that's a boom.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the holiday season. I'm still hitting below the belt.
High ground. High ground.
Classic
Drop the
Jimmy
mic.
Mac. Classic Jimmy Mac.
Classic. Do we have time for one more listener mail? We've got a shorty.
Should we?
Here.
Let's do it. Come on, it's the holidays.
We got a shorty, and
let's hear from everyone.
This one's very relevant. So if you haven't listened to this week's after show, this will definitely give you the incentive that you need.
Chat, fellas. This is Curtis in Omaha. One of my favorite moments in RFR is when you guys uncovered the original recordings of the Wilhelm scream. And as a 40-year-old grown man, I would want nothing more this Christmas than for you guys to unearth a similar recording of the EOP fart. If you could find Ben Burt with half a cigarette hanging out of his mouth saying, all right, EOP fart, take one. And then this poor sap, probably also named Wilhelm, just doing his darndest, just... And then Ben Burt being like, no, it's not a squeak. There's an EOP fart. It's a real fart. It's got a sphincter the size of a baseball. Now let's hear it.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sure it's out there.
What's going on?
I would love an RFR investigative report. Jimmy, you're my only hope.
Yeah, you know. Oh, swank.
Yeah, there it is.
A wet one from Ohio.
So if you haven't listened to the after show yet, you'll find that there was a rather lengthy analysis done here at Rebel Force Radio on the fart sound that could be heard buried in the mix on the latest episode. And, of course, there was a little bit of a debate as to whether or not this was the OG sound. That's right, that one from episode 1. Peace. So what our caller is asking, Jim, is there was, for the Wilhelm screen...
Was that you? Was that you?
What?
With the Piusa?
Yeah, it was me.
Was it?
That was me.
Do it again. With the fart. Play the fart.
All right,
and then
here
do
we go. All right. Piusa.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was not looking at the screen because me and Jason could see each other.
Right.
I'm actually staring at this book, The Sounds of Star Wars, trying to find, by the great J.W. Rinsler, I'm trying to find reference to the Eope fart live as we do this show. So I wasn't looking at the screen. And when Jason, do it one more time. I'm closing my eyes.
Okay.
Everyone close your eyes. Don't look at Jason. Close your eyes.
Piusa.
You gotta be kidding me. That's amazing.
I'm available.
You are an exact audio double of Ahmed Best. What was that? You farting also?
It was. It was. So not only was I providing, all right, not only was I providing the Jar Jar, I was actually providing the Eope fart.
Piusa.
See, I can't even come close to
my own
cheeks. How do you do it?
Piusa.
You know what? That was the greatest Christmas gift you could give us, really. I mean, I feel so blessed.
You're so welcome about that.
And it could that may become a ringtone available to our Patreon audience. I haven't done ringtones for the longest time for those people. As a matter of fact, that was like the first thing I thought of. What can I offer our Patreon audience as a bonus? Ringtones. And then I put like 4 or 5 of them out there and never did it.
Everybody loves a good ringtone. I say bring back the custom ringtone. That was a thing that we did with our smartphones. When we first got smartphones, kids, we all had custom ringtones. That's right.
All right. Well, maybe you could welcome 2025 via your ringtone, which will be Swank. Do it one more time. Come on. It's
wow. All right. I got to have the...
I feel spoiled.
I gotta have the proper motivation here.
Wow. And that was Jason actually farting that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was
that
not even a recording. That will be the ringtone available.
I recommend that for all the mother-in-laws out there. If you got a mother-in-law and you want to give them a custom ringtone when they call, there you go.
Well, there's no info in the book, The Sounds of Star Wars, about the origin of the Eope fart. I mean, fart sound effects have been around since sound effects were invented. As a matter of fact, if you do the research, you'll probably discover the very first audio sound effect ever recorded to tape was a human fart. So, that's where it all started. And Ben Burtt made the Eope's fart because George Lucas loves good scatological humor. He loves a good fart joke. And he gave it to us with the Eope and Jar Jar Binks in episode 1. And we did do a breakdown of the farts because an Eope could be faintly heard farting in the latest episode of Skeleton Crew. And I compared it to the classic Star Wars trope of if you had an alien who was from a planet, he's seen in a scene of Star Wars eating a pizza. So that means he comes from a planet that worships pizza, that their entire society is based around the pizza. Just like with the Eope, it farts once in the Phantom Menace. And so naturally, the Eopes are filled with flatulence. They're always smelly. Whenever you see one, it's ripping one.
How did Deborah Chow, how did she dodge the Eope fart trap?
You know what? That does say something for the showrunners, Watson Ford, who are putting Skeleton Crew together for us. I think they have a very solid grasp of the tone of Star Wars, and they keep it consistent with certain elements of Star Wars past, which means they are strong students of Star Wars. They're legit. So I would like to see them get a chance in the big leagues, you know? This is a great little audition that they're putting together for Star Wars. How about letting them helm a trilogy of Star Wars films that really matter, that address the things that really matter when it comes to Star Wars? What matters when it comes to Star Wars? Jedi versus Sith, rebellion versus empire, and, of course, lightsabers, blaster battles, cool dog fights in space. Let's put the wars back in Star Wars. And I think Watson Ford have really shown that they understand the tone and the feel and the pacing. There's so many technical things about Skeleton Crew. I think just hit it out of the park and really prove itself worthy of the Star Wars canon. The only thing about Skeleton Crew that I don't feel that's up to speed is its actual impact on the existing mythology. I feel this is spin-off central, this story.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I want the end result of the kids' adventure to have a huge impact on future Star Wars storytelling. I hope this is like planting a seed to create great stories to surround this event and this set of circumstances that the kids are experiencing right now, primarily with this planet Ad Atten and the pirates, and all of this stuff is building a great foundation. I want to see Star Wars build on it, and I think they can if they play their cards right.
I agree. I think another aspect of this could be, you know, we're all familiar with the idea of bounty hunters. We know the Imperials. We know the Jedi. We know the Sith. We know all these factions. Now we're finally getting a real good 360-degree view of the pirates. So the whole idea of introducing the pirates as a thought out and multi-dimensional faction, that does open some doors when it comes to storytelling in Star Wars, because it's establishing them as, you know, being up there with, like I said, other classes of character like bounty hunters and things like that. So, yeah, the Great Pirate
It fills
Wars.
the vacuum.
It does.
It fills the vacuum left behind from the Empire. These guys are taking advantage of the situation. The Empire typically shut this stuff down. It wasn't so in your face, the presence of pirates in Star Wars. But now with the Empire gone, pirates feel like, hey, this is our time to shine in the spotlight.
They fill the vacuum when there is a lack of order, and we know that this is a period of time when the New Republic is trying to establish order, but it can't to the degree that the Empire did for philosophical and practical reasons. So absolutely, the outlaws are going to certainly take advantage of that situation, and the pirates are doing so in a big way.
It's a very merry Star Wars Christmas. A very merry Star Wars Christmas. A very merry Star Wars Christmas. May the Force be with you.
Rebel Force Radio.
All right, let's go to news. How about some headlines?
Let's dive in.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news.
Come closer, I have good news.
All right, starting off with, as Mac was talking about earlier, Alan Bergman. He is a Disney biggin. Had some recent comments via Vulture about the state of Star Wars, and in particular, Skeleton Crew.
I thought this was kind of interesting because a lot of people are sort of shocked that the old ACOLYTE was discarded right after the season wrapped. It became known that it was not going to get a second season. So naturally, people are wondering, well, Skeleton Crew, if this thing performs, is it going to get a second season or not? Is it built for that? And so Vulture asked Alan Bergman in this exclusive conversation they had with him, co-chairman of Disney Entertainment. They ask, quote, "The Acolyte had many strong reviews and did well in ratings its first week out, but you ultimately opted against the second season. Why didn't you move forward? And can you offer any hint as to how Skeleton Crew's doing or its future?" And Bergman says, "So as it relates to The Acolyte, we were happy with our performance, but it wasn't where we needed it to be given the cost structure of that title. Quite frankly, and to go in, yeah, right. So it costs too much. To go and make a season 2, we can't do it. So that's the reason why we didn't do that." So they're basically saying, listen, if The Acolyte was a breakout hit like other streaming shows that are extremely popular, like, take your pick. If it was like, if people were putting their eyeballs on it like they do a show like Yellowstone or
sure,
take your pick.
Even Mandalorian. Look at Mandalorian. You don't have to look even outside of Star Wars. Mandalorian was a hit from the beginning.
Right. And that costs a lot of money. Did it cost as much as The Acolyte? I don't know, but it seems like the price of creating these shows keeps to steadily rise. And I thought The Mandalorian had great special effects and was really effective for whatever its budget was. If the budget provides success, then that's what clears the way for a second season. He's basically saying, if you read between the lines, that The Acolyte didn't bring in the type of ratings that could justify the cost of a second season. And so what, are they going to make a season 2 totally on the cheap? I mean, would fans be cool with that? If the story is strong enough, I say, well, instead of maybe a $250 to $300 million TV show, can you put together a second season that's steeped in a solid story that doesn't cost that much? Can you make it for half as much? Can you make it for $100 million? Can you make it for $50 million? Story matters. But they're saying, and George Lucas basically said this, that you can't make Star Wars on the cheap. It just can't happen.
Sure. It's why they didn't go with the Star Wars Underworld. The economics didn't work. And in this case, this is a tale as old as time. It's about return on investment. And you can get to the point where you're spending so much money on the investment, you're never going to get the return. I think that's kind of where they were on The Acolyte. I don't know how, with this business model, I don't know how a streaming series could return an investment of something like $250 million. Now, I'm not an expert. I don't work in that industry, but I can't imagine how many toys you'd have to sell, how many amusement park vacations would have to be booked, and how many subscribers you'd have to gain on Disney Plus for them to say, yes, The Acolyte, it delivered. Not with that price tag.
To say. I mean, the return would be a serious spike in subscribers. And how does Disney determine, those subscribers are coming for The Acolyte or any show?
Right.
How do they determine that? They don't know how. They just wanted to build a streaming service that could rival Netflix. Because at that time, Disney was the top theatrical studio in the business. So they thought they could snag streaming away from Netflix or deflate Netflix, and it just simply didn't happen. So now the days of seeing a $250 to $300 million streaming series that's consisting of 8 episodes that are 30 to 45 minutes long in length, those days are over. Those days have come to an end. They have to find a way to tell Star Wars storytelling on a more affordable budget. And is that even possible? George Lucas didn't think so, and now Disney is absolutely waving the white flag.
Well, here's what the numbers say. The Mandalorian, the first season, had a budget of $100 million. So that was about $10 million per episode. Now, that was a few years ago. We were coming back from, that was in COVID. They were using the volume. There wasn't a lot of practical sets and location shooting, but okay. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series, that was about $15 million per episode with a budget of $90 million, so slightly less. And you go back and watch the Kenobi series, you can kind of tell that that was a lower budget than Mandalorian.
Or that a lot of the budget went to Ewan McGregor.
Sure. Now, Andor, that was a pricier one. That was a $250 million series, but they got 12 episodes of that one. So your per episode cost was about $20 million. Longer season. And I think, Jim, at the end of the day, they're going to be able to amortize that over 2 seasons. And that cost per episode is probably going to drop even below the $20 million. Because I think they're able to reuse quite a bit of what they did for season 1 and season 2. Just a guess. Oddly enough, the Ahsoka figures, according to this report, they have not been officially confirmed. But there are some that are saying that, estimates are saying that it was substantially lower than the budgets of the other series. Then when we get to ACOLYTE, this is where things really go crazy. $230 million, only 8 episodes, about $29 million per episode.
You don't see it on the screen, in my opinion.
With ACOLYTE?
With the ACOLYTE.
I agree.
Yes.
You do not.
I thought ACOLYTE felt like the smallest of Star Wars shows. They go to these Jedi temples, and I mean, they're just clearly sets on a stage. And the Jedi temples are non-imposing. They're just these doors they walk through, and oh look, I'm in the Jedi temple now. There's no grandeur to it. There's very little epic quality to the ACOLYTE. And even with the witches, they're supposed to be on this giant mountain outpost, and it just seems like they're 30 actors crammed into the corner of a stage. There's no epic quality to it.
No.
Yeah. So
by the way, Skeleton Crew, $136 million for that series. So that's much more on par with the first season of Mandalorian.
And to me, it looks like Star Wars.
Absolutely.
It feels like Star Wars. The environments they go to all have an exotic quality to them. They haven't just been out in wheat fields. Hello, Rise of Skywalker. Or in the middle of forests. Hello, The ACOLYTE.
Right.
That's fan film level stuff. Every environment that the Skeleton Crew has been in thus far feels like a completely exotic and original place that we've never seen before.
Borga was so populated, and even this encampment that they end up this week is very, very populated. Whereas one of our beefs in the past with some of these series, including animation, was that how sparse everything looked.
Yeah.
There were, it just didn't have that feeling of a busting population. But you definitely see that, I feel like, with Skeleton Crew.
Star Wars storytelling visually is steeped on an epic level. It has to be big. It has to be broad. It has to be bustling. it has to be just an entire environment that envelops you. And when Star Wars doesn't provide that, I think that's a step backwards. And we've seen it. We've seen it in very obvious ways, not only in streaming, but in feature films too, in some of the sequels. But you would never see that in a George Lucas produced thing. All of the films are as big as the means can provide for the era in which they're being presented.
George was always pushing to the outermost abilities of his team of wizards. Whereas I don't get the sense, despite these incredible dollars being spent, I do not get the sense that they are trying to push the medium at all. I don't think that's part of the equation. That might be one of the elements. People talk about what makes Star Wars, the alchemy of Star Wars. Perhaps one of those elements is that there was added incentive and added motivation from George Lucas to further the whole craft of storytelling and movie making for generations beyond. I don't get the sense that any of the creatives at Lucasfilm today are trying to really push the envelope beyond what has been done before.
Well, Jon Favreau is there. And Favreau started to develop things like the volume-esque sets, the stagecraft. He started to really develop that stuff when he was shooting films for Disney, the live-action remakes of The Lion King and Jungle Book. That's where that stuff really started to build into reality. And he approached Lucasfilm with this idea of The Mandalorian to move that technology to the next level. And of course, ILM, those guys are always breaking new grounds when it comes to special effects. I think the visionaries still do exist within Lucasfilm, but sometimes with productions like maybe the Kenobi show or maybe the ACOLYTE, where that technology was placed in the wrong hands, inexperienced hands, and it shows on the screen, in my opinion. It's very subjective, of course, but it lacks the epic quality that George Lucas worked so hard to establish as a foundation and a standard for Star Wars visual storytelling. So, as fans, we've only been conditioned to demand the very best from our Star Wars. And so it might go back to what Bergman is saying about the cost not justifying the bottom line. And that's what it comes down to with the ACOLYTE. It's odd because I've seen some ACOLYTE advocates doing victory laps online in the wake of these Alan Bergman comments. I've seen ACOLYTE.
What do they have to be so happy about?
Because they're saying, look, see, it wasn't the show itself, it was the cost of the show.
Well,
it's like, wait. Let's back it up. Back the truck up.
They're talking past the sale. They're talking past the sale. They're skipping over a really important part, which is the reason that the costs are unjustifiable was because the performance was so bad. Had the performance been better, then the cost wouldn't have mattered as much. These people really need to go back to their high school economics class. They really need to It's shocking.
Dude, I was looking at Reddit. What do you expect?
See? It wasn't the show. It was the budget. Oh, God.
But wait a second. Back that truck up.
All right, back to Bergman. So Bergman,
Skeleton Crew.
The future of Star
Skeleton
Wars.
Crew.
Yeah.
But first, there is questions about Skeleton Crew, like what's up with Skeleton Crew if you're going to just cancel the ACOLYTE because of the cost in such an abrupt fashion? What what does that mean? The future is in store for the Skeleton Crew. And he says, well, that's in the process right now, so we'll see. We've seen some growth on that. We'll see how that goes. The reviews have been excellent on Skeleton Crew, so we have to see how that all plays out as it moves forward. So they seem to be leaning a little bit on critical response to Skeleton Crew. And, I mean, anybody with a set of eyeballs has to admit that the critical response to ACOLYTE was mixed to harsh. That's problematic for the Disney company. You know, Lucasfilm and Kathy Kennedy can spend it any way they want. But when it comes to where the buck stops, it's not Kathy's desk. It's guys like Bergman, the guys who sit up in the ivory towers at Disney. Sometimes I think maybe we're unfairly pointing our arrows at Kathy Kennedy. But then I remember she's the one who greenlit all this crap. So, and I'm not saying, crap. Listen, whatever. The bottom line is Kathy Kennedy will take the victory laps when things like The Force Awakens breaks box office records, or when Rogue One outperforms anyone's estimates, or when The Mandalorian becomes this surprise hit as the new Disney Plus app launches. Kathy will take all those victory laps. But then she points the fingers at fandom when things fail and says it's our fault. When we're the only ones watching it, the hardcore fans, it's the general public who's tuning out. And that's not right. And that's not fair. And Kathy is the one green-lighting this stuff. But yet, the guys in the Disney Tower, they're the ones who are determining whether or not it will move forward. And once they start canceling stuff at a more rapid pace, that could really mean some bad news for Kathy Kennedy's future at Lucasfilm. Because look at what's been going on the last couple of years. The Indiana Jones film really underperformed. The Willow show crapped out and was removed from the service to provide a tax incentive for the Disney company. ACOLYTE underperformed and was canceled. No season 2. And now Skeleton Crew, from reports, it is underperforming, despite the fact that fan reaction like ours and critical response has been largely positive. Has the brand been damaged?
Oh, absolutely. And the brand has been damaged. There's no question about that. The brand has been damaged. Yeah. And in fact, here's the thing. The worst has happened. It's not that the brand has been damaged and people are out. Yes, there are some of those that make a whole living or a side hustle criticizing Lucasfilm. I'm talking about average folks that aren't even thinking about Star Wars anymore. They don't even know that there's a new Star Wars television series airing right now, a streaming series. That's worse than people actually criticizing you when they stop talking about you at all. That's show business 101. Who cares what they're saying about you as long as they're saying the name right? That was, the famous quote back in the day. The fact that this show is going largely unnoticed. And I will say, about the YouTube class out there that, again, makes a side living criticizing Star Wars and Disney and throwing dirt on its grave and, Star Wars is dead. They're being very quiet about Skeleton Crew. So that's telling me that goes against the narrative. I think they're probably rather enjoying Skeleton Crew. But instead of them coming out and saying that, maybe this is a turning point for Lucasfilm, they're just not going to say anything. They'll wait until the next thing that they don't like. So that's why you listen to Rebel Force Radio, folks, because we're gonna give you all sides of this. We're here. We're in for a penny. We're in for a pound. We're watching every series. We're watching every episode of every series, and we're telling you what we like and what we don't like. And but if you just scroll around on the YouTubes, you're just going to find sensationalism and fire Kathleen Kennedy and, oh, I heard she's resigning or getting fired next week and that kind of stuff. So we are Star Wars fans, for Star Wars fans, by Star Wars fans, and we want the best for the franchise. But we're going to call it like we see it. You might disagree, but we're definitely trying to look at it from all sides. By the way, Alan Bergman was the front runner to replace Bob Iger, but recent reports are saying that Dana Walden is most likely the one that will replace Bob Iger. But Alan Bergman, co-chair of Disney Entertainment, is he's on the list. He's on the list. But the smart money apparently is on this Dana Walden, who, among other things, has helped garner 183 Emmy nominations for the Disney company in 2024 alone.
What?
So, yeah.
What the hell? All right, go Dana, I guess. But I firmly believe that Bob Iger is Palpatine, and he ain't going nowhere. I mean, he's in there for an unlimited run at this point. He's not going
unlimited power. Yeah.
Exactamundo. But I mean, back to what you're saying about, I don't know. You know what? I was going to do a whole rant. I was just going to vent like crazy. And then I stared at you, Swank. Yeah. I saw you tugging on that Santa Claus hat yet you're wearing.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, this is the holiday season. I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna live up to my mantra. # just enjoy Star Wars. And damn it, I'm just gonna enjoy it. I'm not gonna get my panties into a bunch about anything right now. Not a damn thing. I'm here to celebrate Star Wars Christmas.
Holiday. All right. So Vulture.
All right. So Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
They're gonna wait to see. They're playing a wait to see game, but they are encouraged by what they consider a growth in viewer numbers.
Yeah.
From the apparently the premiere landed pretty flat.
Yeah.
The premiere landed with a thud.
Right.
And I could see that. I can tell that by our own Rebel Force Radio metrics that the premiere for Skeleton Crew landed with a thud. But it appears that there is enough growth to make the corporate guys enthusiastic about the potential future for Skeleton Crew. So they're going to play wait and see. So Vulture asked Alan Bergman, what about the broader franchise, both in streaming and in theatrical? And Bergman says, in terms of what's coming up, we have Andor Season 2, which we're really excited about. It's excellent. I've watched all the episodes, and it's a fantastic season. Okay, so some studio support for Andor, which Star Wars fans have already known. It's a quality series, a solid story that appears to be going somewhere. And to hear the studio head being excited about it gives me a little bit of hope. Not the studio head, but, the co-chairman of whatever. Bergman's way up there, I mean, his office is on the same floor as Iger's. Maybe way down the hallway, but
still
it's
up
on
there.
the same floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is when Iger's in the office and not on his yacht. Which yacht? I don't know. Don't look at me like I know which.
Does it matter?
Yacht. It could be any yacht, but his yacht, he has several. So Andor, the studio seems to be enthusiastic about it. And then we have Ahsoka, Season 2. And Bergman says, Dave Filoni is heading, and then we're looking at a number of additional series that are in development. We'll see what we decide to do. As I said earlier, they have to be great. And when we're in the position where we think we have what we want, we're going to move forward. All right, that's some pretty big statements about the future of Star Wars streaming series. It firmly appears that Lucasfilm is developing several series right now.
Yep.
But it's not Lucasfilm's call or Kathy Kennedy's call. Alan Bergman and the guys on his floor of the executive suite are going to be making the decisions on what we as Star Wars fans will see. So, I mean, within the corporate structure of Disney, that makes all the sense of the world. Again, we throw a lot of crap at Kathy Kennedy when she's just trying to get things greenlit herself at the end of the day.
Sure.
But does Kathy have the wherewithal, the knowledge? Is she even into Star Wars to begin with? Does she get it? Those are the big question marks, I think, when you really start to boil it all down. Why has Star Wars been so hit and miss? Because Kathy doesn't quite get it. And so she's relying on a committee of people to influence her decisions. Once she makes the decision, then it has to go up the ladder to guys like Bob Iger and Alan Bergman. And those guys will make the final call. Too many cooks in the kitchen? Well, hell yeah, compared to the previous existence of Star Wars where there was only one cook in the kitchen, and he was standing there wearing a Kiss the Chef apron, and his name was George Flippin' Lucas.
Yeah, it was Kiss the Chef or Kiss something else. Your choice.
Yeah. Or kiss brick, pal, because you're out on the road. But Star Wars does not operate that way. And they need to find the magic mixture of all these heads at the table, all these voices in the room. They need to find a magic mixture in which it produces more consistent Star Wars. So Bergman talks about Star Wars in the theaters. He says, in terms of the films, at this point we have Mandalorian, which is coming out Memorial Day of 26. And we've got a number of films that we are developing.
Oh, they do.
When we are ready, we'll be making announcements as to what those are. And yeah, we do know there are a huge number of films in development for Star Wars. I mean, we could be talking a dozen, maybe plus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity going on.
In fact, we have a story coming up later on about Taika Waititi, and that's just one of the Star Wars films.
Yeah, right on. Is he still in the mix? Well, I mean, we might as well just jump right to it. There is a rumor out there about Taika Waititi's Star Wars film that we've known has been in development since December 2020 when Kathy Kennedy announced it at a big investors whoop-de-doo that we all got to watch. I guess news breaking this week, according to industry insider Daniel Rickman, Lucasfilm has now shelved Taika Waititi's Star Wars film. They have pulled the plug on Taika's Star Wars. But they have slotted another one into its place, which is yet another movie that was announced in 2020, but we haven't really heard much about, except that we thought it was canceled, but I guess it's back on. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron. So I guess the mojo is going behind Rogue Squadron now instead of Taika Waititi's film. The last time I think we really heard Taika talk about his film in any really great depth was he appeared on Kelly Clarkson's show last year, and he revealed that he was definitely working on Star Wars.
I heard that maybe you're doing Star Wars. Are you going to do a Star Wars film?
Yeah, I've been developing that for a few years.
Okay.
With them, but I think, with any film, but that one in particular, it's something I'd really like to get right, so I don't want to rush it. So
yeah.
Just going to
that's exciting.
Bubble along on the side.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Our family, we were Star Wars fans growing up.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
yeah.
Me too. I want to capture that joy and the entertainment of those early ones that, like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and all those ones. So I'm trying to figure that out. And
all right, take your time.
It'll happen.
Because you do it right when you do it, so take your time.
I agree with Kelly Clarkson on just about everything, but I especially agree with Kelly Clarkson on this particular issue. Take your time. But I'd be willing to bet my next year's salary that there will not be a Taika Waititi Star Wars film. I don't know that we'll ever see a Taika Waititi Star Wars film.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't think that. Well,
he said
there's not even an idea for it. We've never really heard him say that he has a concept. At least with the Patty Jenkins film, there's a concept. And they went so far as to film that little sizzle video where she, donned the X-Wing flight suit and the helmet and then jumped up into the X-Wing. And it was a love letter to her father, who was a fighter pilot. There's a story there. I'm willing to root for that because there's something of significance there. With Taika, no offense to him, but he was just the flavor of the week at that point. And they go, oh, wow, everybody's loving these Thor movies and this What We Do in the Shadows. Let's give him a Star Wars film. That's the way they've operated for a lot of this period of time, which is just take the flavor of the week, the flavor of the month, and get people excited by saying we offered them a Star Wars movie, when the reality is all that really happened is someone from Lucasfilm said, are you interested in a Star Wars? And who's not going to say, yes, they're interested? And then, boom, there goes the press release or the leak to Variety or Deadline. And we get in this situation we've been in multiple times. Taika Waititi ain't doing no Star Wars movie. I know it.
The saddest thing that never really became a reality, and Taika Waititi actually came close to making this a reality, was the fact that Lucasfilm had these streaming series, and they also had a film franchise that was on the ice. Mm-hmm. So you would have thought that they would have been bringing in creatives into the streaming series to get them on their feet and fully involved in Star Wars and trained to a certain degree to then advance into directing Star Wars feature films. And Taika Waititi could be considered as like the forerunner of that. But Taika, he had a career as a director, obviously necessary. Mm-hmm. He was working in Star Wars on Mandalorian. He directed an episode and voiced the character IG-11. So he was getting more and more steeped in the Star Wars. And then something just went off the rails with him. They couldn't get from point A to point B as far as creating a project that he could helm. So it failed with Taika. But what about the other creatives? What about your Deborah Chows? What about your Rick Famuyiwas? What about your other episodic directors that you brought in to work on this vast amount of series?
What about a Tony Gilroy?
6 series.
Pay a guy like Tony Gilroy whatever he wants to create a Star Wars film or a series of Star Wars films.
Well, in Tony's case, I think he made it kind of clear that he was fully committed to working on Andor and he wanted to then move on afterwards. But we don't know what Tony's going to do next. Maybe he got bit by the bug. Maybe a big announcement that will be coming at Star Wars Celebration Tokyo next year is going to be Tony Gilroy's trilogy, which will move the saga forward. But also we have 2 directors attached to potential Rey films with Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy and Sean Levy. Mm-hmm. We have Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron. We have a trilogy that is supposed to be coming from that guy. It was a Simon Kinberg.
Oh,
remember him?
Yeah.
Simon Kinberg.
Yeah, we've got,
ring any bells?
We got James Mangold knocking around trying to create the first testament of the Jedi Order.
What is going to be the next thing that's greenlit? Bergman's not kidding when he says there are several projects underway. And will any of those projects then get transferred into the streaming series realm of things? Also, the Lando film is floating around out there from the
There's
Donald
another
Glover
one
brothers.
that I'll bet any amount you want will never happen.
It's just so insane.
You can tell when you just have a gut feeling at this point of what you think has got some sort of mojo behind it. The Mangold film, I'm pretty convinced is going to happen. Mainly because I think they actually have a real concept there. That's an area of the timeline that I know they're jonesing to get to. So why not have James Mangold? Now I do know that the fan reaction to the latest Indiana Jones film has sort of soured that a bit. But I don't think that I'm really conflicted about that last Indiana Jones film. I would not watch that movie and say, well, that shows that James Mangold doesn't know what the hell he's doing in the director's chair. I don't think that is the case. I don't think that's the case at all.
No.
I got some issues with the story here and there, but largely I enjoyed seeing Indy on the big screen one more time. I don't really have any axe to grind against that movie. So I'm all for James Mangold having a Star Wars project. Sean Levy, Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, that movie, that Ray movie, I was writing down my list of RFR moments of 2024. And the one that I wrote down was the Ray film is a saga in and of itself. There's a saga surrounding the whole making of that film. So, at this point, so many of our thumbnails over 2024, Jim, featured Ray as we would get tidbits. The Ray film is greenlit. The Ray film is dead. The Ray film is back on. The Ray film was never back on. The Ray film was never off. That is the kind of storyline that we've been following behind the scenes. So I think there will eventually be a film that will feature those actors from the sequel trilogy. Whether it's going to be a Ray film or a Ray trilogy, I don't know. I think that it will happen eventually, but I think we're still a long way off from there being a Ray film.
I agree. It's the holiday season. I'm not going to vent. I have a whole rant. But I'm saving it for 2025.
To all, a happy Christmas. And to all, a good night.
Rebel Force Radio.
Let's talk about one of your favorite topics, which is the ILM Wizards. We love talking about the Wizards at ILM. And when watching Skeleton Crew, I'm dying to hear from these guys and what they've gone through to bring this story to life. So what do you got for us?
Well, we have some interesting insight from a couple of ILM wizards. We have Sean Kelly, who is the animation supervisor for Skeleton Crew, along with ILM's Eddie Pasquarello, and he is ILM visual effects supervisor. And they're both working on Skeleton Crew. And so they talk about some interesting things having to do with the series. Most notably is bringing Neil to life. There are so many instant Neil fans out there. But to me, the real curiosity has been, how did they create this effect? Is it a CG thing? Is the kid actor wearing the Neil head on his own? Right. How are they?
Or does the kid really look like that? I mean, have we vetted that for sure? Can we eliminate that as a possibility? Does the boy resemble an elephant?
Does the boy resemble an elephant? That's a question that's been bubbling under the surface here at RFR for the longest time. But no, the fact of the matter is absolutely not. It's played by a kid named Robert Timothy Smith. Okay. So Robert Timothy Smith, he's a kid actor. The way you know is because he includes his middle name in his official credits.
Yeah.
Which is like a rule for all kid actors in the 2000s. So Robert Timothy Smith is Neil. And so what are we seeing when we see the show? Are we seeing his performance on set? Are we seeing some CGI creation? What's the deal with Neil? Everyone wants to know. So ILM wizard Sean Kelly discusses what it means to bring Neil to life.
So the original plan that we thought we were doing was we're going to have Robert wear this head-mounted cameras and the dots on his face, and we were going to capture his performance and then apply that to a digital Neil. And we thought that Neil would be animated in most of the shots. But once they started shooting, the puppet and the puppeteer on set were so good and it was so charming that everyone kind of fell in love with the look of the puppet. So that kind of changed our plan, because then if we put Robert's facial capture onto Neil, it's very fleshy and organic, and it does not move like a puppet. So instead, our awesome keyframe animators went in and we keyframed Neil's face in the half of the shots where we augmented Neil. Half of the time, it's just straight up
animatronic head.
Yeah, animatronic head with just the screen kind of painted out, and otherwise it lives on its own the way that it was shot on set. Other half of the time, we're augmenting it in some way, which is usually to portray some emotion more or to work with the dialogue better. And what that could be is the puppet head, plus we animated just the eyes and brows, or we animated eyes, brows, and mouth, or just the trunk, or just the ears, or some mashup of those parts to bring his face to life when needed.
Okay, all right, I get that. So, what's the young actor doing exactly? Is he, not minimizing, but is he for the most part a voice actor at this point? Because it sounds to me that it's a combination of puppet and CGI.
Yeah, there are behind-the-scenes photos of Robert Timothy Smith, and he has those dots all over his face.
Yeah.
That are supposed to be reference points for the animators.
But it sounds like they abandoned that from what Sean Kelly was saying.
I'm thinking it's more along the lines of they shot the scenes with him there as reference. And then they shot other scenes with the puppet there. So maybe in scenes where the kids are like reacting to Neil and things he's saying, when they cut away to the kids, maybe those are shot on set with the actual actor. But when we see them all together, it's the puppet. Or I think it's an animatronic mask, very similar to the way that they did the Nemoidians in The Phantom Menace. Where it was actually actors wearing a mask with all these automated gizmos in it that crew members are using remote controls to move in sync with the dialogue. And so, yes, to answer your question, he is largely a voice actor, but he had all of the on-set experience with the rest of the gang. When we see him on screen, though, it's going to be a stunt person wearing the animatronic mask with CGI enhancements. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So it's not the actual kid on set.
Interesting.
They tried it. They said it looked too fleshy and weird.
Yeah.
I would love to see the abandoned footage of Neil with Robert Timothy Smith's facial features planted on top of it.
Neil 1.0.
Graphics.
That's what we want to see. Maybe with the 4K Blu-ray release at some point. We'll see that. But wait.
Would love to be a fly on the wall in the ILM studios when they make that effect happen for the first time. And they put the kid's actual face, they meld it onto Neil's face. And they go, oh, that didn't look like I thought it would. And they mention, they say in that clip, they paint out the screen. If you look at behind-the-scenes photos of Neil on the set, when it is the animatronic mask, you'll notice on the bridge of the trunk, there is a screen in which the actor can actually see out of the mask with. So, think when you're in the amusement park and those mascots come marching out, and they always have some sort of, you can see.
Yeah, right. There's a screen. Usually it's in the mouth or something like that. Yeah.
It's like, that's how they can see. Okay. So Neil has that for the actor on the set, and they painstakingly paint it out of there. So interesting stuff to hear from these ILM guys about what goes on behind the scenes on Skeleton Crew. Also, something very fascinating I learned was SM-33 is a practical puppet being used on set, being operated in the same fashion in which they made C-3PO come to life in The Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
when 3PO was all wires and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there was a name. There was a Japanese-inspired name for that type of puppetry.
Yes.
That they use. So yeah, an actor is walking behind with these rods. So these rods then translate the actor's movements or the stunt person's movements to the actual robot.
We call them droids. Swan.
Droids.
And these here parts, we call them droids. So Skeleton Crew, Kelly and Pasquarello were asked about Easter eggs we might see in Skeleton Crew. And they bring one up here that I was unaware of. It's not necessarily a Star Wars Easter egg, though. So here's what they had to say.
There are beautiful, nuanced Easter eggs all throughout. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think that they did a good job in general of planting little nostalgic things. And it's not like there's some projects where it's over and over, remember this, remember you liked this, remember you liked this.
This was just more like an homage, right?
Yeah, there's just little things for the fans here and there.
I think there's one we can speak to. It's this is something we place, and it's nothing. It's no big deal. When Wim gets to Port Borgo and he looks up, there's legs hanging over the rafters of two pirates, and in our minds that was like a homage to Pirates of the Caribbean. Because arriving at Borgo, and so I think that was one little thing that we put in that was not really anybody's going to care about but every time I see that I think of Pirates when you ride the ride. But that was just my takeaway on that one.
Jim, you're a big fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. You've been on it many, many times. Did you?
Yeah.
Do you know what they're talking about here with the legs hanging down?
I think I do. It was an observation I made when I was maybe a first grader, and I was on the Pirates ride. When you are on the boat and you're sailing into the town that the pirates have plundered, the town they set everything on fire because they're pirates. As you're riding into that area, you go under a bridge, and there's a pirate sitting up on top of the bridge, and his feet are dangling over, and he's drinking a bottle of rum, and you ride right underneath him. And as a kid, I would always look up, and I would just be so amazed that the Disney magicians made the bottom of this guy's feet look dirty. I mean, he's barefoot.
Yeah.
So naturally, they added that little bit, and you see the hair on his legs down to his ankles and stuff, and it's just a fully immersive effect. Yeah, the great animatronics they have at Disney. Even back when I'm flashing back to several decades ago when I first noticed that guy. So that's who I think he's referencing. I have yet to go back to Skeleton Crew episode 2 to see where these feet are dangling from. But to this guy, this ILM guy, it was something that meant something to him. So Eddie Pasquarello from ILM, visual effects supervisor, he's dropping in Easter eggs that really only he knows about. But so it's nice he's sharing with us. So if you go back and look at Skeleton Crew when they arrive on Borga, look for the dangling feet, and you know that's an homage to Pirates of the Caribbean.
All right. One of the characters that has emerged from Skeleton Crew that really, I think, certainly left an impression on me. I just thought the boldness of the design was the character of Kh'ymm. The owl lady kind of looked like an owl cat, and the whiskers of a cat and the other features of an owl. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who's not he's not like us, but he's a Star Wars fan, and he goes, I don't know about that. That would just seemed like so. I don't know. It just was so literal, such a literal translation of an earthly type thing. And I said, there's a whole range, and we talked about it on the program. We talked about Admiral Akbar and lobsters. We talked about the Wolfman. I mean, we got Wolfman again here with Captain Brutus. So, I mean, Star Wars has got a long history of using or anthropomorphizing, you know what I'm saying, animals. And so, Owl Lady, I like the Owl Lady. I think there's room in a galaxy far, far away for Owl Lady. One thing I didn't know was that it was the same actress that played Maybe in Arrested Development. She was just a little, just a kid, a teenager in that. So I certainly didn't put 2 and 2 together there at all. So love Arrested Development. I like Owl Lady.
Yeah, Aaliyah Shawkat is the actress, and she voiced the Owl Lady Kh'ymm that we met up with in Skeleton Crew episode number 3. So she was at the Skeleton Crew world premiere at Disneyland, and of course, RFR microphones were there. So let's get caught up with Aaliyah Shawkat and hear what she thought about the importance of making her Star Wars debut.
I mean, it's been my longtime dream. Of course, now I'm an owl. I'm Kh'ymm, not to belittle owls, but, I always thought it would be as a human or a Jedi. But an owl, nonetheless, is still pretty cool. I've always been obsessed with Star Wars, and I have brothers who've always been obsessed with it, who know every name there is. So it's very cool. It's a huge honor.
Wow, Maybe has grown up.
That's Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Did you watch Kirby, excuse me. How dare I blaspheme Curb? I do not mean to blaspheme Curb. Arrested Development. For its time, it was, because it went on Fox. I think nowadays Fox would be way too mainstream for a show that was so kind of esoteric and as Curb. God, Curb. I really need to go watch some Curb tonight.
Apparently.
Yeah. Arrested Development. Great ensemble cast.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I watched some of the first season and kind of tuned out of Arrested Development. My kids watch it all the time. And the show has actually started to annoy me a little bit because it's constantly Ron Howard, nonstop. Every scene, the scene goes for 3 seconds and it stops, and Ron Howard explains to you what's going on. Then it goes for another 3 seconds, stops, and then Ron Howard explains to you. It's like, oh my God, I love Ron Howard, but enough.
Enough
already. Yeah, so it drives me nuts in that kind of way. It's a very superficial review. Some of the episodes I've watched have seemed super fun and funny. I sure did like seeing a few episodes with the late, great Carl Weathers.
Oh, yeah.
His characters seemed to be really funny on that show, but I wouldn't call myself a fan or anything of Arrested Development. It was okay, but I know that people love it. My sons are like super fans. You know, like how kids don't like to do what their dads do. Hey, guess what, folks? Sometimes dads don't like to do what their kids do, okay? So that's where I stand on Arrested Development. It's funny sometimes. That's my review.
Funny sometimes. I love that.
The most
That's
superficial review. Please don't start writing to me demanding I watch the show.
That's on the back of the DVD. It's funny sometimes. Jimmy Mack, Rebel Force Radio.
Right. It's a new segment we do called Superficial Reviews. So, don't think twice about it. But Aaliyah Shawkat, she talked about Kh'ymm and gave us a little bit of insight, like we just heard from the ILM guys. They give us insight as to how they brought Neil to life. Well, she provides some insight into how they brought Kh'ymm to life.
Everything's very practical. Like even like Kh'ymm, who I play, it's like this beautifully designed puppet. So there's very minimal CGI in a way. Like they did a lot of cool practical, like Jim Henson style designs that I think is really reminiscent of the early Star Wars, and that's a really great quality to do nowadays, I think.
Yeah, you know, these guys, these younger guys that are coming in, like Watson Ford and the Chris's, was it the Chris's that directed?
The Daniels.
The Daniels that directed this episode. But Jim, these are people like us that grew up on, I want to say the limitations, because I think the limitations of the puppetry is what, and what special effects were back in the 70s and 80s that led to not just the furtherance of the technology, but also created the charm and some of the magic that we remember. And Yoda, there's no greater, in my opinion, there's no greater example of how, you could use Yoda and Jabba, to be honest. No matter how far we progress technologically, you will never recreate the magic of those two puppets, of Yoda and Jabba the Hutt, no matter how hard they try. I don't think they've done it digitally to this day. They haven't done it digitally, to the extent that when Rian Johnson got the opportunity, the privilege of bringing Yoda back to life, he went back to the puppet. So the fact that Neil is a puppet head and Kh'ymm is a puppet bird, I love that. I love that, and it makes total sense.
It's nice to see them sticking with old school approaches to creating these characters while taking full advantage of the advancements in technology that have taken place. I mean, you talk about Yoda. That was 45 years ago, man. There have been huge leaps forward.
Yes.
In the animatronics that they can use with these puppets and the technology behind bringing these practical effects to life. So much so you don't have to rely on CGI anymore, which is kind of a godsend. It would have been very interesting if George Lucas had really pushed the animatronics forward as far as the technology goes, as opposed to pushing the digital effects like he did. It would have been, maybe Hollywood would be a very different place if that happened. But of course, digital effects, that's a beast you couldn't control. And George Lucas was the guy who put the lasso around that bull and brought it to the ground in the late 90s, early 2000s, thus creating the special effects landscape that exists to this day.
Yeah.
But innovations continue to proceed forward, and practical effects have leaped so far ahead as far as technology goes, to the point where it doesn't look so cheesy anymore. So it's a good thing, actually, that practical effects has continued to evolve, even in the wake. The overwhelming and suffocating effect of having digital and computer-generated images that can do anything you think of.
Yeah.
But now they can do it practically.
Well, what I think is so interesting about what we're hearing is that it's the intersection of the two technologies that creates Neil and creates Kh'ymm. In this instance, it is the puppetry, the real world puppetry, combined with augmentation of the computer graphics. So, you might say that, while George didn't really back the horse, so to speak, of animatronics or even stop motion, or not stop motion, but motion capture, quite the way they did with Lord of the Rings and Gollum, those advances wouldn't have probably happened had it not been for that work of ILM during the years of Jurassic Park and the first Star Wars prequel. So I think the two needed each other, but it's a really interesting idea. What would have happened had George been, seen around that corner of the intersection of those two different technologies?
Yeah, the man does see around a lot of corners.
No doubt.
But, I think the wise investment was in digital technology. From his perspective, absolutely.
Yeah.
Despite the pushback from some of his contemporaries, like Steven Spielberg, who would never imagine in a million years, even to this day, of shooting something with a fully digitally generated set. Spielberg would never shoot in that kind of environment, even to this day.
He loves the organics of film, and practical. Yeah. I think there's room for both philosophies. I think we obviously need them, because when they combine, they create something really, really magical. But hey, speaking of seeing around corners, let's look in the rear view mirror and talk about the year that was 2024, not just in Star Wars, but also Rebel Force Radio. Looking at, do we want to do this through the lens of RFR? Do we want to go in the Wayback Machine?
I think we should.
Okay, let's do that. Because RFR is, among many things, it is also all about being sort of a time capsule to sort of preserve where fandom was when. So you look at our after shows and things like that. These are, some people will sometimes criticize and say, well, it's funny that you guys don't like Last Jedi so much, because I listened to the episode that you recorded within minutes of seeing the movie and you loved it. It's like, yeah, that's the point. The point is to record our immediate reactions, and then you can listen to Rebel Force Radio and hear how those opinions evolved, why they evolved. It's always just funny to me when people kind of point out the one thing that I think makes this show, one of the things that makes this show so important in terms of understanding fandom and all that. They point to that as being a criticism, when actually it's what it's intended to do, which is chronicle the evolution of fandom, not just from our points of view, but the points of view of our listeners and viewers and all that as well. So anyway, this is the year that was 2024.
Yeah, we wrapped up 2023 with the Napoleon Dynamite brothers, John Heder and his brother Doug, and we dug deep into their Star Wars fandom. That was a hoot. And then we kicked off the new year with breaking news, that The Mandalorian was going to become a film franchise, and The Mandalorian and Grogu was going to be the next cinematic offering from Lucasfilm. It took us all by surprise. No one saw this coming. There were no rumors about it. Well, maybe there were, slight rumors about it.
There was always speculation. I mean, thinking, Jim, about you sort of banging the drum ever since really The Mandalorian proved to be a success and a hit was, hey, this is bankable. I think this is fodder for the big screen. So there was speculation, but there weren't many signals from Lucasfilm about this actually being a film. In fact, there were other movies that were being talked about well before Mandalorian and Grogu. And so this sort of just came out of the blue, and not only came out as a project, but very quickly got pushed to the front of the line. That was what was so amazing about this.
Yeah.
Is like, it's announced, and by the way, it's going to be the very next film that's going to be on the big screen.
Exactly. And also what I thought was notable from a fan standpoint is, unlike other Star Wars film announcements, those were all like stop the presses moments. This did not stop the press. People are just like, oh, okay, great. A Mandalorian movie's coming. And I was like, ooh, man, it's not having the cultural impact that other Star Wars feature film announcements have had in the past. And to me, that sort of sets the pace for Star Wars in 2024, where it's becoming kind of obvious that Star Wars does not have the grasp on popular society and popular culture like it used to. Now it's becoming more of a regular thing.
Yeah.
That, there's a new Star Wars movie being announced. It's not like, well, pull the car over. It's not like stop the presses.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to Jason, jump on the microphone right away.
Right.
And I took note of all of that. And I think that sort of sets the pace for Star Wars 2024. We continue to go on. Is Rey Skywalker dead? Was another show we did in January. And we received hate mail for this. Yeah, hate mail. Maybe it was the image we used to promote the show, which was
it's from the
Rey
movie.
Out cold and dead on the floor of the Exegol Arena from The Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, we got hate mail for this one. Is Rey Skywalker dead? We were only asking about the possibility of the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy project having its plug pulled in the wake of the Mandalorian and Grogu announcement. So, haters gonna hate. That's all I gotta say. We quickly forgot all about that and jumped into the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch started to make its presence known in 2024 with the new trailer for Season 3 that featured the surprise appearance of Asajj Ventress. So Asajj lives, which was a surprise to us all. But the character, much like the Bad Batch series, ultimately really didn't go anywhere. So maybe the future has been laid for more adventures of Asajj Ventress, but her character had very little effect on the Bad Batch story at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that it was more or less a way to bring a character back into the canon and into, out of the, what we all assumed was her death, and make her a viable character for more adventures and stories. I think that's really what it was about. And also, Dave really has a hard time of giving up his characters.
Well, this is true. Yeah, much like George Lucas himself.
Yes.
But we don't know what the future for Lucasfilm Animation is. We've received no indication about what's going to be happening as far as a future series.
No.
I would imagine one is in the works, but there hasn't even been any rumble about it.
I think we can look likely forward. I believe it's been announced already that Visions Volume 3 is a go for 2025. I feel like that at some point was said. Now that's not quite the same thing, but Jim, we can't assume we're not going to see in 2025 another Tales of. We've already had the Tales of the Jedi. We had the Tales of the Empire, which we'll get to. So it's possible that we could see another Tales of in 2025. I'd like to. But I'm with you. I'd rather see an announcement and a debut of an animated series that's going to be around for a little bit, like Bad Batch or like Rebels. Yeah.
The things you speak of are flashes in the pan.
Sure.
We need something that has some longevity and has a legitimate story to tell, like we had with the Clone Wars, like we had with Star Wars Rebels. like we had to a degree with the Bad Batch. But unfortunately, overall, the Bad Batch really kind of fizzled out in 2024, in my opinion. It didn't give me the satisfying conclusion I was looking for, because it didn't really go anywhere and left so many question marks. But the way it concluded, we saw that Omega became a part of the growing rebellion. So I'm wondering if we will ever see any stories featuring an adult Omega. Maybe we will. I'm not sure. But they laid at least the foundation for something like that. So as the year continued, we covered such stories as rumors about the Star Wars films, Gina Carano's lawsuit,
which is going to probably be a big story, I think, in 2025. I think the Carano lawsuit that is bankrolled by Elon Musk, who's certainly no stranger to headlines, especially these days. I think that is going to be a big story. But you take the bitter with the sweet, and the bitter being that Carl Weathers passed away way too soon at the beginning of 2025. Just one of a handful of losses that we suffered in the Star Wars community. Most notably in 2023, we saw the loss of Baylan Skoll actor Ray Stevenson, and that was a blow. And then to lose Carl, who was also an actor that was giving life to a very active character in Star Wars storytelling, like Ray. So a real bummer. And of course the stories and everything we heard about Carl is like nobody really had much bad to say about Carl Weathers. Seemed like a really, really good dude. Also on Curb Your Enthusiasm, my dad.
Was he? No. He was on Arrested Development.
Oh,
Swank, you're doing it again.
Doing it again. How am I confusing these shows? Larry, David, leave me alone. Yes, he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm playing himself. And he did a great job of playing himself on that show. But
well, we did. We definitely paid tribute to Carl and featured audio highlights from his career in Star Wars. And let's not forget, we also lost a creative behind the camera with Carl, as he was a director of several episodes of The Mandalorian. So,
indeed.
Sad to lose Carl Weathers. We started to look forward to the ACOLYTE. Earlier in the year, and what they say about setting high expectations. Billy D. Williams released his autobiography this year.
It did not disappoint. We had thanks to you, we had weeks of audio highlights of that, which was fantastic. We brought back the Billy D. quote of the week.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. It also was one of those moments where I really realized, that Billy D's getting up there in years, and that audio book really does kind of give you a sense of hey, just how old he is. But you know what? I don't look at that as anything to be sad about. The man's a survivor, and he's a legend. So, but it was like, wow, Billy D. Because there's a period of time sometimes with these actors where they go, it seems like from about 50 to 70, they don't age at all. They just sort of stay frozen in time. And then, then after 70, they get into their mid 70s, boom, then it hits you. But
one could only hope. That Billy D. Williams will be around for a long time. But it's funny you bring that up. I was just thinking about that today. About early March, the craze that took over the internet. Cerveza Cristal!
Cerveza Cristal!
There you go. That was Swank. Bringing it. So we had a lot of fun with the fact that... news resurfaced of a 2003 broadcast from Chile featuring beer advertising edited into the Star Wars films themselves. So that became a running gag that continues to exist to this day. I mean, just this week on the Skeleton Crew After Show, someone called in proclaiming Cerveza Cristal. And it's hot. It's happening. We did have another loss in the Star Wars universe earlier this year. Mark Dodson, the laugh of Salacious Crumb, passed away. And Mark was a legitimate friend. That's Mark Dodson right there. He was a legitimate friend of Rebel Force Radio. And me and Tyler Page and Daniel Logan spent a weekend with Mark in Peoria, Illinois last year in the summer. And there's so much of that story I cannot speak about on this microphone.
I'm just hoping there's going to be a movie someday called Weekend with Mark. All about you, Tyler, and Daniel Logan hanging out with Mark Dodson.
Oh my God, the twists and turns and drama and comedy. It's all there, pal. It's all there. So our good pal, Salacious Mark, we called him. Salacious Crumb Mark Dodson passed away. So R.I.P. Mark. He was a good guy. He was a fun guy to hang with. Definitely unpredictable, but a lot of fun. Also in the spring, we learned about the return of Rogue Squadron. We talked about that earlier in the show.
This made my highlight reel. I just got to let you know. I was writing down my favorite memories of 2024, and the long-lost discovered WGN radio discovery was at the very top of my list. Great stuff.
A buddy of mine working at WGN Radio found buried somewhere in a box a reel-to-reel tape of Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher doing an interview with WGN radio personality Roy Leonard. And this is something that hasn't been heard since it probably aired. And we digitized it and played it for you guys here on Rebel Force Radio. It was an exclusive. I was very proud to bring you guys. And it was an amazing insight into
cool.
Yeah, like where the actors' heads were at as Star Wars was exploding into this giant cultural phenom in the summer of 1977. We get a very lucid Harrison Ford who can talk in detail about the relationship between Han Solo and Greedo and all of this stuff, a fully committed Harrison Ford.
Oh, indeed. That's worth it alone. Yeah. It's great. And then, of course, the unbridled enthusiasm of a young Mark Hamill.
Right.
Yeah.
And the quick-witted cynicism of a young Carrie Fisher, all on display in this piece of audio tape. So that was a lot of fun to bring that to Rebel Force Radio audiences. I was just as enthralled as anyone upon making that discovery. Puppet Lando debuted a song, Buckle Up Baby, in mid-April this year. And people
now
are
it's
still
a classic.
buzzing about that. Oh, yeah. It gets
a
regular airplay across the nation. And a Puppet Lando, that's a machine that just won't stop going. RFR Live in Bristol, Connecticut for May the 4th.
What a happening that
What an event that was. Oh, my God. People came from all over the country to hang with us in Bristol, Connecticut as we celebrated Star Wars Day. They were treated to live music from High Adventure, a ton of laughs. Robert Lopez, famed film composer Robert Lopez, a genuine EGOT, graced us with his presence. And it was just really a lot of fun to get back on the stage with you, Jason, just to be in the same room with you.
Yeah.
And carry on with our Star Wars laughs and good times. So and we
was
were
great.
joined by tons of RFR VIPs were there, and we partied deep into the night.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
In
we did
Connecticut.
indeed. Yeah.
Much to the hotel manager's chagrin.
As you mentioned earlier, Tales of the Empire did drop on that very same weekend, and we analyzed the stories of Barriss Offee and the Magistrates, Morgan Elsbeth.
Well, that was so cool to be able to experience new Star Wars with you as it dropped. I mean, we don't get that opportunity very often, and it's really special when we get to experience it together. That was awesome.
Absolutely. And it was it was fun. I watched the first half of it in my hotel room on my iPad.
Yeah.
And then we got together in your room, a whole bunch of us.
Yeah.
And we watched the second part, the Barriss Offee stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Then we went and hit the stage in Bristol at their beautiful theater out there. That was just awesome. And thank you so much to everyone who came out to that show. We are working on a May the 4th weekend event for 2025.
Yes, we
that
are.
will blow you away. It just, God, fingers crossed. It all goes through exactly the way we want it to, and it happens. But we are
circle your
deep
calendars.
in discussion. Yes.
You know, a lot of people, when they get back from the holiday break, they have to fill out their forms with work, and they have to plan for their time off in the year. And May the 4th, that will just give you that forewarning. Pencil that in. That you might want to take some time off there for that and be with us.
Yes, we will.
We have a Death Star. We've tested it twice, tracking down rebels and ending their lives. The Empire is coming to town.
Jingle bell, jingle bell.
Rebel Force Radio.
So the Bad Batch series wrapped up after 3 seasons in late May. And we had a lot of fun watching that show every week, doing the after shows, connecting with you guys. Steven Stanton called in a bunch of times.
That was
fun.
fun.
So it's always a pleasure to hear from him, the voice of Grand Admiral Tarkin. And to wrap up the season, D. Bradley Baker joined us on Rebel Force Radio for a full debrief of the entire series of the Bad Batch. And it's always great to get reconnected with D. For the very first time ever, D answered the questions from our famous Yoda questionnaire.
Yes, he did.
And revealed that Tauntaun is his favorite character.
Yes. He does a
Tauntaun.
dead-on Tauntaun, by the way.
That's why. I think it's all because of the sound of the Tauntaun. D gets, he's like a dog. He has this sense of hearing that attracts him to various things. And the Tauntaun definitely is in D. Bradley Baker's cavalcade of sounds. So we started to look forward to the ACOLYTE in early summer. FJ DeSanto graced us with his presence, with his famous profit or loser predictions. We discussed a lot of things. We got deep into Star Wars over the summer.
Here's another one that made my top moments in RFR in 2024. One of, I think, the very best Cantina interviews we've ever had was the brother of Carrie Fisher, Todd Fisher. What an absolute joy that was. And, Jim, I remember us pre-show wondering, thinking, okay, we probably have, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes with Todd. And it ended up, if I remember correctly, like being the whole show. It was the whole show because he had so many incredible stories. Obviously being the son of a legendary Hollywood actress like Debbie Reynolds and then the brother of Carrie Fisher. And he himself is such an amazing personality. So, wow, it was just, that's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, you and me both. What a life Todd has had. And it was great to connect with him. It felt like we really did connect with him.
Yeah.
And by doing so, I felt more connected to Carrie Fisher herself. And obviously, I've been crushing hard on Carrie Fisher ever since I was 8 years old. So
Yeah.
To get to and like not only like crushing, but like she's always been to Star Wars fans, especially of us from the original generation of Star Wars. She's always been like our little sister, you know, and to get to talk to Todd, Carrie actually was his sister, to get his insight and feedback and stories that some have never been told about Carrie.
Yeah.
Todd shared information about growing up with his famous princess of a sister, and we were eating it up. So I really recommend his book. The audiobook is great. Todd actually narrates it, so you hear incredible Carrie Fisher stories right from him in his voice. He's the son of the legendary Debbie Reynolds as well. And to this day, he's done a really fantastic job carrying on the legacy of both his mom and his sister. And I was glad that this summer you and me, Jason, got to play a part in that.
Yeah.
So
that was
great. He was a great guy. Yeah, what a great guy. And so that kicked off, I think it kicked off a run of like really interesting interviews that we had on the show. The following week, we talked to James Cox, who is a film director, and he directed the film Wonderland and actually worked with Carrie Fisher on that film. And James is a really interesting guy who has had a pretty wild lifetime in Hollywood. And he just wrote a cool new sci-fi book called Grand Theft AI. We really enjoyed talking to him. One of our most popular shows of 2024 was After the Acolyte with Kyle Newman. And of course, one of our best friends here at Rebel Force Radio, a genuine RFR family member, Kyle Newman, he reviewed the Acolyte and did so in his trademark style of being very honest, pulling no punches, but yet not attacking. He spoke from a perspective as a filmmaker, as a Star Wars fan, as a storyteller, and applied his lifetime of experience in the Star Wars galaxy to his review of The Acolyte. So a lot of people seem to appreciate hearing from Kyle. Another great interview. Katie Sackhoff appeared here on us.
How great was that? Fantastic.
Yeah, she joined us in the cantina. It was really wonderful to hear from Katie. Like I said, we went on a nice run of quality guest star appearances on the show here as the summer was beginning to wind down. And so Katie joined us in August and talked about all things Mandalorian and Bo-Katan. So she was incredible. I really loved having Katie on the show and getting to know her. We started to look forward to Skeleton Crew with some reveals that dropped at D23 and began to really look forward to Skeleton Crew while reacting to the news of the cancellation of the Acolyte. Acolyte plug pulled very swiftly, 3 weeks after the show went off the air. It became known that not via press release, not via official announcement, but through information revealed to trade magazines and trade publications and websites, and then it just spread like wildfire that the Acolyte was getting the plug pulled after one season. We talked about that earlier in the show. Started to look forward to the Mando movie and Andor Season 2. We were getting news about Ahsoka steadily throughout the summer, about what was going on with it, when it was expected to be filmed, when the release date would happen. And Tyler Page, Billy Mack, and myself attended Chicago White Sox Star Wars night, and we sat right behind home plate. And wackiness ensued. And so you can see a video report of that on our YouTube channel. And then another loss to us in the Star Wars world. James Earl Jones passed away in September. So we paid full tribute to the late, great James Earl Jones, voice of Darth Vader.
And we had some fun, too. You know, James had such a great sense of humor and was not afraid to kind of play into the Darth Vader role. And, so it's not like it's not a funeral by any means. We certainly pay our respects, but we look at certainly the more fun and light side of James Earl Jones's history as the voice of Darth Vader. And he just relished it. He loved it. He loved being the voice of Darth Vader.
As it turned out, later in his career, he showed great fondness for his contributions to Star Wars. So we dug deep into the RFR archives and dug up some fun audio highlights of James Earl Jones. And we also we obtained exclusive photographs from Dave Filoni's high school yearbook.
Oh, boy. In the same episode. Amazing. Wow.
Amazing, right? And so you can check those photos out on our YouTube channel. We had the amazing singer-songwriter Sin join us for an episode of RFR to review Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. And Sin is awesome. She, of course, is married to Kyle Newman, and she just released a new album called Valley Girl, Lost in Laurel, Side A. So check it out. It's streaming everywhere. We love Sin. We also discussed the news about Donald Glover and his Star Wars film, which is in development, and started to speculate about that. We talked about the potential of Keanu Reeves joining the Star Wars universe. And then once again, we had to pay a tribute to another great personality, huge contributor to the original Star Wars trilogy, producer Robert Watts. And we paid tribute to him by looking back at his career. And we played some highlights from an interview I did with Robert back in 2008. And Robert was the type of guy who really shot from the hip.
He really did. He wasn't one of those, where he spoke in PR speak. He was plain spoken and didn't make any excuses, but always polite, always kind, and that's another one of my favorite episodes because I learned a lot about Robert Watts in that episode and hearing those clips from that interview you did.
Yeah, he was really, really a cool dude. And I was so happy. I was going through some folders just a few weeks ago, and I found an autographed 8x10 signed to me from Robert Watts.
Great.
I immediately framed that sucker and put it on the wall. So I was very happy about that. We got caught up with RFR family member, film concept artist Paul Bateman from London. And we got his take on the current situation with Star Wars and Disney. And
reconnecting with Paul this year was fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that things are looking up for him and his family. So, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we love Paul. We go way back with Paul. And it's always interesting to get his take on Star Wars. So if you haven't heard that episode, check it out. It happened in October. We broke down a lot of these record-breaking budgets of the Star Wars films. And we had another unbelievable interview with yet another unbelievable woman from the Star Wars galaxy. When we had Morgan Elsbeth, Diana Lee, and Asanto join us in the cantina to discuss her experience shooting Star Wars films, her connection to Bruce Lee, and her...
She calls him Uncle Bruce.
Yeah, good old Uncle Bruce. Diana Lee and Asanto. I became an instant super fan of hers. the moment I saw her on the screen. And I think after our conversation with her, a lot of RFR listeners became instant super fans of her as well.
She was awesome.
Diana Lee Inosano graced us with her presence. She was great. We had another great conversation with another great notable member of the Star Wars history, Star Wars archaeologist, former Lucasfilm executive David West Reynolds. And he got us all caught up with a lot of Star Wars lore, lightsaber lore specifically.
Oh, my gosh.
And told us about this cool project he's doing based on the archaeology of the Indiana Jones films. And that's called Chasing Raiders. I believe his fundraiser is now up and accessible on where
is it Kickstarter?
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
He told us some cool.
Great guy with a lot of really fun stories and super smart. I mean, he's a Star Wars scientist. I mean, he's a bona fide archaeologist in his own right.
He's really, really smart, yet he still spends time with us here on RFR.
That's true.
So obviously he's bemused. We bemuse him. He's bemused by RFR. It's just like in kind of that intellectual way. We discuss the future of Rey in Star Wars. We discuss the future of Simon Kinberg in Star Wars and the new trilogy in which he is apparently attached to. Started to wind down the year with hardcore expectation and predictions for Skeleton Crew, and made our way through Thanksgiving into the RFR Skeleton Crew era.
Yes.
We're currently in the this is the RFR Skeleton Crew era. And we are slaying.
We're in it.
We're in it. We are up to our next scene. And we're so happy you guys are here with us for the ride. Again, as I said, more Skeleton Crew after shows coming to wrap up December. If that's not enough RFR for you, go to patreon.com/RebelForceRadio and check out all of the amazing podcasts we have available for you there, exclusive. We did 40 plus episodes of RFR Q&A this year. We did at least 10 episodes of the Babu Freaks, at least 10 episodes of RFR RPG. And on top of that, there's all kind of exclusive things happening on Patreon, ad-free shows, full show video. It's all there. And when we release the shows, Patreon gets it first via the RFR Early Bird. Coming in hot like a Minoc, it's the RFR Early Bird. It's been kind of a quiet month for December over there on Patreon. Unfortunately, we've had some scheduling snafus, and Skeleton Crew and the holidays and everything has kind of limited our release schedule. But we'll be back in full force in January with weekly episodes of RFR Q&A. They're already scheduled. The year will kick off with the Babu Freaks and RFR RPG, and will continue each and every month for 2025. So if you want more RFR, join us. Patreon.com/RebelForceRadio. Support RFR and get a bunch of bonus content in return. Plus access to what I think is the greatest community of Star Wars fans on the internet. And that's at RFR on Patreon. So thanks again, everyone, for sticking with us for RFR in 2024. It's been a wild, wacky year for Star Wars.
Before we wrap up the year that's 2024, I wanted to ask you, because, we do get notices that there's a very vocal group of RFR listeners out there that love when we talk about our collecting. And this is not exclusively a collecting show, but was there anything that came out in 2024? I've got a couple samples here. I know you're the prop comic of RFR, so you like to bring out the toys. But was there anything that came out in 2024 that really sticks out in your memory? Maybe an action figure or Is something that you got to add to your collection?
That's a great question. And I think this year is a year when my collecting wasn't as intense as it may have been in previous years. As always, I'm collecting the 3 3/4 inch action figures, and that's what my true priority is. And I really enjoyed the set Hasbro put out of the zombie stormtroopers from the Ahsoka series.
Yeah.
I thought those
Love
guys
that.
were awesome.
With
like
Captain Enoch.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the deal with Captain Enoch? You know, he's kind of weird
That's
and
a
stuff.
great
and so
set.
these guys are a lot of fun. Well, I like them so much, I've kept them here on my desk so I could just whip them out at a moment's notice. But I have them all here. And so there's been various additions I've made to the collection this year, but nothing too much of a like holy grail or anything that I've been chasing after. It's been kind of a relatively laid back year for me as far as Star Wars collecting goes. I'm looking forward to 2025 and the release of that HasLab Cantina set.
Oh,
and I've already cleared. I already have space for it. I know where it's going to go.
Yep,
it's going to happen, and so that's something to look forward to. But mainly, I believe in my immediate future, it's going to be more about getting the stuff I have already into a more organized state.
Yeah,
before I really start fully dumping more on top of the pile, because I have spoiled myself. I really have. I really am feeling at that point where I have assumed the position of a very spoiled, rotten, entitled brat. And it's all of my own making. I've done everything I've wanted to do with Star Wars. I've acquired everything I've wanted to acquire from Star Wars. I've contributed. I wouldn't say everything I have to contribute to Star Wars. I mean, let's face it. I produced that fart segment from the Obies this week. People have been emailing me and texting me nonstop since that dropped last night. So I know I have a lot more to offer to Star Wars, but I'm feeling very full and satisfied.
That's
as
a
far as
great
being
place to be. That's a great place to be. One of my favorites that came out this year was this new, from the Vintage Collection, which I know you're a fan of, this new Princess Leia Organa figure from A New Hope. I think we finally got sort of a definitive, in this modern era, definitive figure of Princess Leia as she, debuted, premiered to all of us back in the day, wearing those white robes from Episode 4, A New Hope. And, gone is monkey face Leia. We've got, I think, a really nice face sculpt. And this was, I think, my favorite figure in the Vintage Collection of 2024. Really, really cool. I got to throw this out as an honorable mention for Vintage Collection. How great is it to walk into a Target and see a Jadna Nawad hanging on the pegs, considering that, the show is on right now. I don't think we've had this for a very long time, where we've had figures dropping and being on the store shelves when a new show is airing on Disney Plus. So that was very cool.
That is cool. Now, obviously, Skeleton Crew was pushed back a full year.
Right.
So the toy companies had a jump start. But yet, the Kenobi show also was accompanied with a lot of merch at the same time it debuted. I mean, that's some. Oh, what are you? You're opening Jod?
No, spoiler alert. No, I got some. I just had to rip out of the package for this segment.
I hear it. I recognize the sound of a bubble being torn off of the backing card. I know that sound well. And so, yeah, it's great to see the Jod is out there. I wish there was a 3 3-inch version of the actual Gang of Kids. But
how is there not?
Again, Hasbro's prioritizing the Black Series because obviously they make more per unit sold. So they're tampering down. They have been kind of tampering down on 3 3/4 inch, but I think they're denying themselves a lot of sales, at the end of the day.
Well, what seems to be happening, I think, with the 3 3/4, and what we're seeing with the, as you mentioned earlier, with the Cantina playset, diorama, whatever you want to call it, through HasLab, they're really theming themselves. And so in this instance, I think last year with the Jabba's Palace set, there was a lot of Return of the Jedi love and a lot of characters in the denizens of Jabba's Palace that were coming out. So I think that's the direction they're going with the 3 3/4 inch line, where they're kind of thematically branding the year. And this past year was the inhabitants of the Cantina. But I know you're not a huge fan of the Black Series, but I do have to say my favorite Black Series this year figure is the Moma Nadan from the Cantina. It's a really beautiful Ithorian figure, and I'm very, very happy to have this one. This is very, very cool. When they came out, what was the guy? What was it? Olga? Who's the Ithorian on in Galaxy's Edge? You go to his pawn shop or whatever, Olga or something like that. Yeah.
Olga.
When they came out with that figure, I thought, well, it's a matter of time before they actually give us the real Hammerhead, the real Ithorian we all want, and that's this one. So those are my two highlights for 2024 as far as collecting the toys, because that's a big part of really how I express my fandom is getting the figures and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's why I open them, is because it lets me be creative with the actual collectibles themselves.
Yeah.
I get creative in the way I display them. I get creative in the way that it's all laid out on the shelves and the way I present it to people when they come to visit my collection. And I'm really, really at that point now where I think my collection is in a place where I can share it with other fans. So I promise you, in 2025, I am going to open up the collection to other fans and shoot in-depth videos of what I got going on here. I've been teasing it forever. Of course, our Patreon audience is going to get access to it first. And we do a thing on Patreon called RFR Collectors Spotlight. And so that's the place where I'm going to debut my current state of my Star Wars collection. I think I'm finally there. I have no anxiety anymore about the state of the collection. I think the work I've put in 2024 has been so productive that I can introduce it to the larger RFR audience, as I've been teasing forever. I mean, it's Christmas time. What makes Christmas special? Toys, damn it, toys.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, bro, we're running long. I understand that. And we haven't got the Star Wars and pop culture yet. But I have one holiday-specific entry into Star Wars and pop culture.
Let's do it.
Let's wrap up 2024. Yeah.
Which one is that?
Well, I'm not going to tell you until I do the intro.
Well, let's play.
We have to make it official, my friend.
All right, let's do it.
Rebel Force Radio.
You've already made that Star Wars reference.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars parody.
All right.
All right. Let's go on to Jimmy Kimmel Live with John Bon Jovi appearing on the show earlier this year. John was on Jimmy Kimmel's show to promote his new album, Legendary. And Jimmy surprised John Bon Jovi by playing a cut from John's first ever studio recording. And yes, it has everything to do with Star Wars and Christmas. So let's turn it over to the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
Our team here is very excited that they found your
actual first recording.
Yes, sir.
Which is, believe it or not, this is going to seem like a joke. This is not a joke. On a Star Wars tribute Christmas album. The Star Wars Christmas album.
That's right.
How'd you wind up on this?
I was a gopher in a recording studio from the fall of 1980 until 83 when we did the first record. And there was a guy named Miko Minardo who was doing these kind of tribute records taking advantage of the Star Wars craze. He was pretending to be a young boy singing the song. It sounded like an old man pretending to be a young boy. And he says, "Young boy, can you sing?" And I said, "That's what, I think I can." He says, "Go in there, and if you want to do this, it pays $183. And I got $183.
Do you remember the title of the song?
Yeah. R2-D2,
what was it?
We Wish You a Merry Christmas.
R2-D2. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Legends.
You're part of the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
One of the other songs I just noticed the title is "What Can You Get a Wookiee for Christmas When He Already Owns a Comb?" You're not on that one, are you?
No, I missed
that was
out.
the big hit
That came
track.
later in the 80s.
He wasn't on that one. No. He was on R2-D2. We wish you a Merry Christmas. And that's great. That's a great way to wrap up this very special holiday edition of Rebel Force Radio. So in addition to R2-D2, all of us here at Rebel Force Radio wish every one of you listening and watching a very, very Merry Christmas and looking forward to more adventures together in the new year of 2025. What a year 2024 has been. It's been just phenomenal.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, that's not just going to wrap up this week's show. It's going to wrap up the year 2024 here on the weekly Rebel Force Radio podcast. But fear not. As we said earlier, we'll still be here next week and the week after that because we've got after shows to do. There's a new Star Wars TV series on Disney Plus, and we're here for you, and you're here for us as we discuss each and every episode coming at you on Thursdays for the next 2 weeks. Thursday nights, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Rebel Force Radio's YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for a wonderful year here on the podcast. And we're not stopping anytime soon. More Rebel Force Radio coming at you in 2025. What are some of the things we have to look forward to? Well, there's a lot we have to look forward to, like Andor Season 2. How about that? We're going to look forward to that. Maybe Visions Volume 3 will tickle us. I don't know. I'm open to it, but
yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch season. Let me rephrase that. I'm gonna have to watch Season 2. Yeah, I tried, but it just from the get-go, it appeared to me that series was not for me. However, I did kind of like parts of the first season. Now they've announced a third season. Anime Star Wars. I would like it if it was more Star Wars than anime, but unfortunately it's more anime than Star Wars. So again, Lucasfilm trying to tap into the hot flavor of the week because everyone knows that the younger generation is really turned on by anime. But I don't know if that crosses over into Star Wars. I'd love to hear from some younger fans what you think of Star Wars Visions. But I don't know if that's really scratching the itch for me. Something I am looking forward to in 2025, though, is Star Wars Celebration Japan.
Yeah.
And I think that'll reveal some interesting info about the future of Star Wars. That seems to be a big mystery to us right now. We are 4 years removed from Kathy Kennedy's big December 2020 announcement of multiple Star Wars series and shows. We saw about half of them. The other half were scrapped. So I think Disney has wisely moved away from that big sort of whoop-de-doo. I think they were trying to emerge from the COVID pandemic with a big splash. But unfortunately, a lot of those announcements were promoting projects that were half-baked, to say the least, and they never saw the light of day. So what I'm looking forward to in 2025 is a Star Wars convention in Japan that will have some reveals about the future of Star Wars that hopefully are more steeped in reality than the announcements Kathy made in December 2020.
I got another one for you. If there was to be another Tales of in the Tales of animated saga, what would you like it to be? Name 2 characters that you'd like to see featured. I'll give you a moment to think about it. I'm going to throw mine out. I want to see Tales of the Gangsters, and I want to see some Jabba the Hutt and some Darth Maul running Crimson Dawn, and see that conflict we never saw with Kira and Darth Maul from Solo. So I'm going to go with Tales of the Gangsters, a little Jabba action, and Kira / Darth Maul. Jim, I know this is putting you on the spot, like I said, but if you could do another Tales of, what would you like to see? Right now, at least.
Well, I think, Tales of the Bounty Hunters is kind of an easy thing to tap into. Obviously, since 1980, we've wanted to know more about Dengar. We've wanted to know more about Bosk, Forlom, Zuckuss, IG-88. I would really love to see a miniseries based on those guys. And Boba Fett in his prime as a bounty hunter.
His prime, yes.
And then I would like to see Tales of the Scamps, the Tatooine Scamps, featuring Kitster as the key character. Mischievous, likable, amusing Kitster leading Tales of the Tatooine Scamps. And I think that you can get multiple seasons out of that concept. Again, Lucasfilm, you know my number, you know my email. Why don't you reach out?
Reach out.
Gold.
You could have Wald. You could have Kitster in there. You could have the sister. Wait, wasn't that Jake Lloyd's sister in there? It was part of
All
the
of them.
scamp groups. All of them. Yeah, let's see that.
All of the scamps.
Hey, kids
but
are hot
primarily Kitster and their adventures.
All right,
I
for
think
more
you got
of
a
this
solid
type
winner.
of Star Wars analysis, you can check us out, as Max said earlier, on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Weekly full show video like this video right now. You could be watching instead of just listening to this podcast. Exclusive podcast you can't get anywhere else, and the greatest Star Wars community to be found anywhere is at Rebel Force Radio on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Please watch, subscribe, like, comment on our YouTube videos. Rebel Force Radio on YouTube, youtube.com/Rebel Force Radio. We're also on the other social media platforms such as X, such as Instagram and Facebook, the official website for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio. Always rebelforceradio.com. But if you really want to help us out, best way to do it is to do what you're doing right now, which costs you nothing, which is listen to this podcast and refer your friends to it. That's right. Talk to your friends about this new Star Wars series on Disney+. Wait, you're not watching Skeleton Crew? It's got Jude Law in it. Everybody loves Jude Law. He was in that holiday movie with the girl from Titanic. You gotta like this. Watch it and then listen to the Rebel Force Radio after shows, and we'll tell you what to think about it as well. So it's a great bonus. Rebel Force Radio, the after shows. So please subscribe if you can, and if your podcatcher of choice allows you to do so, leave a review. We love your reviews. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
That's it for us for the year of 2024, but fear not, we'll be back with more Skeleton Crew after shows over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be back in earnest early 2025 with more weekly Rebel Force Radio podcasts. But until then, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
may the Force be with you this Christmas and always.
Please,